Alright, how you doing, guys? Well, first off, this is our very first video for X-Planet, and it is an attempt to try to basically educate you guys on this new product that Citadel Minitures came out with, or more specifically, Games Workshop. A lot of guys have been kicking the tires on this and trying to figure out why they should buy it, and hopefully this little video will help out. So first off, the point of this little book is to try and help out everyone from various skill levels on how to paint. It really helps out the guys who've just started, not going to lie there. But first off, let's just crack open the book. The whole entire book is just lavishly, I'm not going to say illustrated, but photographed. The pictures in it are just absolutely excellent. It really covers all angles, especially when they're starting to apply paint. But before we get to cracking open the pages, I want to just bring your attention over to this part right here. This is the DVD. That's right, the book comes with a DVD, and it basically breaks down step by step in video what the book talks about. Now, the author of the book is Adam Troke, and the painter, or the various body parts that you see in the video, is Duncan Rhodes. And basically they break down with video on how to execute all the techniques that are actually displayed in the book. So first off, let's get into, or I should say second off, get into the actual book itself. Like I said, it's lavishly illustrated. Here they do some stages, a little bit of introduction on the dry brush and the compounds. But I want to bring your attention over to this little tool right here. Obviously, you know that's a set of clippers, that's a knife, that's the green stuff, that's the emery board, and this little scrub. This little thing right here, though, is very interesting. I had a friend, Martin, tell me about it, and he raved about it, and I didn't quite understand at the time, or appreciate at the time, why he loved it so much. But basically, it's a mold line remover, used very much like a knife, except it has no cutting edge. So it's completely safe. I know that sounds like kind of like a minor thing for the adults out there, because we all know that we don't cut ourselves, but occasionally it does happen, and this has absolutely no risk of that happening at all. And what you do is you use the actual edge of it to just shave off mold lines. At a future time we'll get into more detail on how that actually works, but I just want to bring it up. This is actually a really, really neat tool. Here's all the various brushes they have. Of course, they're going to talk about their own product and sell their own product. It is their book, so that is no surprise. Here they talk about assembling the product and the reasons why you want to clip something, and the reasons why and how to remove mold lines and what have you. And as we flick through the book, of course, it talks about how to prime, how far, temperature is a concern. Like, for instance, on a hot day, if you spray on a hot day, what's going to happen is it's going to dry in the air and then land on the model, and that's how you kind of get that fuzzy coat. And it's just cool, helpful advice on how to prime. Here's the various ranges, applying paint, and like I said, what's really neat about this book as well is it stands up all by itself. And as I was saying, the illustrations, or I should say the photography, really well executed. In the video, they actually paint this, so you actually see how they apply the actual paint to the model. Again, for the guys who've done this sort of thing before, they'll be like, oh well, ho-hum. But nevertheless, for the guys who are just starting off, what an excellent way to show how to paint. In the video, it actually gives a little, how would you say, a little animated little blurb, I guess, or a little window that pops out with the name of the paint they're using and the brush that they're using. Again, we're talking about base coats here, and of course they're pumping their product with their airbrush with the canned air. So this isn't what's covered in the video. This part's how to do camo and how to actually use the airbrush itself. It breaks down what the colors they used and what have you. Here we're starting to talk about the actual shades themselves. The shades are very much like the old washes, and a lot of us still use the old terminology, washing, and that's the technique that they're using. It's even labeled as such. There's various colors in the actual range itself. And one of the great things, again, in the video, they actually go through this. And a lot of guys, when they're doing washing, especially at the beginning, they try to take a little bit of wash and try to spread it around the whole entire model. And what's nice about the video is you actually get to see the artist apply the wash, how it's supposed to. And you're basically just putting it and pouring it on with the actual brush. And that's how you get this cool effect without getting it all mottled, all splotchy. And here it settles into the recesses nicely. And again, the pictures tell 1,000 words. Here we're getting into, oh sorry, before I get into that, this is actually all covered in the video. They start talking about section washing, washing over white, washing robes, and what they refer to as all over washing. All over washing, I guess, is not a new technique at all. It's very much like dipping, using either army paint or what have you, except they're using their washes in the same technique. What you do is just block out the model with solid color and then wash it. Just all, that's basically what it is. It's not as any more complicated than that. Before I move on, what I also liked about it was using the washes over white and getting really neat effects that way as well. The compounds. The compounds are a very new thing. I don't know of any other color range that uses compounds, but basically what they are really, really thick and textury type paint, almost like a powder. And what it's designed for is for dry brushing. Just that. You apply a little bit on your brush like you would normally, wipe off most of it, and then because of its grittiness or its thickness, it applies as a dry brush really, really well. I got to say, the actual paint itself, very neat. And of course, it goes over various techniques. Some of the most common techniques, for instance, bone and fur. Again, the video covers this and tells you how to apply it, where to apply it. And then, of course, we get into armor, which is the next most popular thing you dry brush. It talks about Space Marine tanks, which is just basically large surface dry brushing, using, of course, a larger brush. And again, this is all covered in the video. And then we get into layering. Now, the range of colors in the Citadel range for layering is 70 paints. There's 70 paints in the layering. That's almost as large as their old range. There were about 74 paints in their old range. So there's quite a variation in color. Now, the main purpose of that, of course, is to try and prevent you or wasting time with blending and mixing paint. So they're trying to cover as many shades as possible. A really amazing range of color. And one of the things I liked most about the book and actually the video is the actual layering technique when applied to skin. They break this right down in the video. I've tried teaching this in classes. Very hard to describe over a phone, much easier to actually just show. And of course the video actually shows you in the step-by-step the base coat in the first layer and the second layer to get those great muscle definition in the model itself. And then the next layering example they cover is armor, and then later the cloaks. Again, an excellent way to describe how to do clothing or cloth in general. This is something that a lot of people have an issue with, and again, the video that is accompanied with the book really helps with describing that. Then we get into glazes. Games Workshop has 4 glazes, as you can see: yellow, green, blue, and red, so some primaries. Now, glazing is something that GW had in the range many, many moons ago, back in, hold on to yourselves, back in the 80s. It's something that they had in their original paint range, but ultimately cut because of the lack of popularity, I was guessing, because a lot of people didn't understand how to use glazes. Glazing is not to be confused as a wash. A wash more or less shades and defines a thing, whereas a glaze, especially the way they use it in the book or as examples, tints. It actually tints just slightly. And one of the really great ways they illustrate that is with the Chaos Warrior model. Here they have it dry brushed and washed, and then highlighted a little bit, just metal. Then they take that same model and add a green glaze, a red glaze, and a blue glaze. And you see immediately, even though it's a subtle effect, you could definitely see the impact it has on the model itself. One of the other great advantages of glazing is when combined with dry brushing, it helps with muting the stark highlight that you sometimes get in, with dry brushing. You just find it too powdery or too bright. And what the glazes do is allow you to kind of almost blend, at least by the eye, help blend the model and make it more muted, more natural, and really makes the colors pop without it becoming stark. So now we're getting into the textured paint. Now, the textured paint is a GW original, and basically it is paint mixed with a sand or an aggregate. And I thought initially it to be a rather gimmicky thing and not something I would use personally myself, but actually I've used it and I gotta say I really like it. It's kind of like sanding and painting your model simultaneously. How much time does it save? Well, if you were to do it the normal way, you would obviously apply your glue and dip your model in the sand, and then go back and actually paint the sand yourself. In this, you actually shave off applying the glue, and you mix the sand and the painting all in one step. It really is a time saver, and I gotta say, I really like the textured paint. Here they go about how to apply it and how to decorate it, I guess, with their version of tufts. GW does sell a line of tufts. Much like there are various tufts on the market. There's ones by Army Painter, and there's another company, and pretty much I think the originator, which is Minitures. Any case, all of it's the same. It's basically static grass that is glued to a spot, I guess, of hot glue, and then applied to ribbons or bands of cellophane. You just pluck off the grass and apply a little dab of super glue or white glue to the bottom of it and apply it to the actual base. Now, what's great about that, here I am, they talk about it right here, but of course in the video they have it all covered. You actually get to see how the texture paint's applied, how it's dry brushed, and of course them taking it off and applying it to the base. Something that's not covered in the video are these little special weathering techniques. Here they go on how to do, on how to do rust and vinegar. A really cool technique, and it really adds a lot of character, especially when you're talking armies that are, how would you say, ancient, say for instance like Khemri, the Tomb King army, or armies that don't necessarily take care of their equipment. In this example, Skaven is an excellent choice, but I've also used the technique on ogres for my Ogre Kingdom army. Here they cover dings and basically chips in the paint, and a step-by-step on how to apply the dark, then the metal, and then to highlight it to accentuate the actual chip itself. And here's some, what they refer to as iconic color schemes. And basically what it is they take some of the most popular armies and break down all the stages in one fell swoop. Again, not necessarily covered in the video, or at least not this page like this, but nevertheless, a really neat way to break things down. And then here we're starting to get into, it's not so much a technique as a way of painting armies. They're referred to as batch painting. A lot of people call it assembly line painting. Other people just call it army painting. But basically, the idea is you take all the techniques you've learned at the beginning of the book and you apply it in stages to multiple models. What you take is groups of 5, 10 models. I myself sometimes do 30 at the same time and do a stage on each model and go through each one of them. As an example here, they're using Tau, and then another example, they're using Knights from Lord of the Rings. And of course, if there's any army that could benefit from batch painting, it's skeletons and vampire counts. What I find very interesting, though, is the models that are pictured here are not the current range, or don't seem to be the current range of skeletons. Alright, so now we get to the section of the book where they apply all the previous techniques that they've illustrated and apply it to all these various armies. The two armies that are covered in the video are the Tyranids and the Space Marines, or more specifically the Aurora chapter. But I find this section to be extremely illuminating. The actual video itself goes through various stages of painting Tyranids and Marines, and I find that to be very, very helpful, I gotta say. I like the Dark Eldar section of this book. I love the Orc section. No bias there. Anyone that knows me? And they break down everything. They take every technique they described, from the batch painting, from the washes, from the dry brushing, from the highlighting, from the layering, and apply it to all the armies, or these most popular armies. And they cover Orcs, Lord of the Rings. As you're flicking through this section, just because you might not necessarily play Lord of the Rings doesn't mean the techniques wouldn't apply to you or your particular army. Anything that's applied to, say, the Harad, why wouldn't it apply to anything that is using red or has a lot of cloth or using bronze colors? It's irrelevant. The book is actually very useful to apply to any model range. All the techniques are pretty much universal. And as we flick through the book, we get into Empire, the most recent army released by GW in the fantasy range, and of course we get to the very oh-so-popular Space Marines. And that's it, guys. That's the book in a nutshell. Of course, it also covers Tomb Kings. And hopefully, as we flick through this book, hopefully you found this brief video to be useful. And that's it. Thank you very much.